Okay, let me start by being honest and saying that when I was thinking of discussing what I'm going to discuss in this episode, I was thinking about calling it an epidemic, and it would have probably made sense in some way, shape, or form. But when I thought about it a little bit more, I realized it's a generation problem, or it may be a generation problem, and not necessarily as much of an epidemic as I might have thought. What am I talking about? I am going to get into that in a bit, but before I do that, I should probably start by giving some sort of an intro, because where are my manners? Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. This is a shorter, less edity, no instrumentally version of the podcast where I get to choose one topic, I get to talk about it, and I post it up more or less as is because I'm on break and I should be doing a lot less. And even though I'm on break, I'm still pushing some sort of content sometimes. But anyways, here we are. This is a shorter, less edity, no instrumentally version of the podcast that I normally do when I'm on break. But with that said, I want to kick things off by talking about the idea of singles and dating, and how dating's become a little bit, actually not a little bit, a lot harder for a lot of us, especially as we've grown older. Now, there are obvious reasons to this, but this has been something that more and more people are complaining about, both offline and just to each other on a day-to-day as far as this time is concerned. So in big 2026, in as much as we may be as connected as we've ever been, we have the ability to meet and interact with more people than we ever could. We are in a position where we are having so much of an issue with the dating market and the people who are in it, or lack thereof, that I may at some point have actually considered calling it an epidemic. And considering that I'm at a point where I might be considering that, I should probably explain why. Now, all of this actually stemmed from a video that I watched on TikTok. It was of a lady who was busy talking about singles events and the fact that she organizes them, and how quite a number of times she may be in a situation where one gender is a little bit more than the other. And also how, sometimes people talk about how, we wish there were more of these people as opposed to us. And, she tried to pose a question to them. So I do want to let the clip play, then I can give my thoughts on it, because this one, I'm not even all about the comments, because I didn't really think there was much to be said there, because I feel like the bulk of it actually stems from the issues that she's trying to resolve. But anyways, let me not get too much into it before playing it. So without further ado,
I host singles events like twice a month at different places in Nairobi. And sometimes we have a great even split in gender, and sometimes we have more women than men. We never have more men than women. However, every time a woman complains to me that there are not enough men, which is every day of my life, I turn the question back to them and ask, do you who's complaining to me, do you know a single man? And the answer is always yes. So if everyone would just bring a single man with them, we wouldn't be in this dilemma. If everyone would just tell that single man that, come, you might meet someone, and then you will meet someone's brother, and you will meet someone's cousin, and you will meet someone's co-worker, and then we'll have enough men. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Okay. Putting it in our pipe, smoking it. Got it. Nice. But anyways, light moment there. I can kind of get the frustration in her voice and in what she's saying. Like, it's so interesting when people are like, oh no, you should market it to more men so that more men can come. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like most people actually forget how marketing works, and they assume that marketing is this magic pill, like a weight loss pill of sorts that will resolve the issue. There were people that were busy talking about how it's weird that it's almost like, you being told to bring your own son to the beach. And okay, personally, I felt like most people just didn't understand the struggles that she's going through, or at least most of the women that were commenting didn't understand the struggles that she was going through. But in what she was talking about, the whole, oh, how comes you don't bring these guys? I kind of wanted to look into two more questions out of this entire thing. And the first one is, why aren't they bringing their male friends? Which is what she actually did ask secondly. But also, why aren't they dating those same male friends? Now, I want to get into the first one because that one's the easier one. Why aren't they bringing their male friends? And I could argue that for the most part, it's probably because a lot of those guys just aren't all that interested in coming. Not that guys aren't interested in dating or in going to singles events. It's just there's not that many guys, especially the older they get, not unless if they are very, very into the idea of dating. There's not that many guys that are out here looking for singles events, which is why I felt like the whole, just market it sort of comments that some people would give just seemed very off. I don't think you guys understand how marketing a singles event to guys usually can be, and if men are usually more into such a thing. Because when you look at it, for a lot of the people that are attending singles events, and I could be wrong for this is just a hypothetical idea. I doubt most of them are between the ages of like 20 to 25. Like, I wouldn't expect a lot of them to be in the early or mid 20s to actually be going for singles events. Not that they shouldn't go, not that there's an age limit or anything. It's just that the chances of finding them is particularly low. Most of the people that I expect to be going for singles events are usually somewhere around the late 20s and all through the 30s, maybe even a couple of guys in their 40s. Like, those are the people that I'd expect. And oftentimes, it's usually women that will probably be more into the idea of a singles event as opposed to a lot of guys that I see nowadays, just mainly because a lot of the guys who are trying to get settled particularly early on probably already got settled, and the ones who aren't settled, who would be prime candidates for such events, are usually either going for drinks with the guys, and an event like this doesn't seem appealing enough to kind of pull them from whatever it is that they'd have been doing with their homies, or they're just doing so well, or they seem to like the idea of not being in any solid, serious, long-lasting relationships with a babe, probably because they're enjoying their singlehood at the age that they're in. They could have peaked, they're making good money, they're pulling babes left and right, so it's not really that big of an issue for them. So that is a particularly good reason, or those are particularly good reasons for why guys would look at it and be like, I don't really see why I could or should go for a singles event. Now, of course, there is the other bit where there is some level of stigma behind the whole idea of singles events, but I'd argue that a lot of that stigma is mostly wearing off because more and more people are attending singles events, in my opinion, and more people aren't seeing anything wrong with the idea of going for a singles event. But, that's just me. But then there's the other question that I brought up, which is, why aren't they dating those same male friends? And I know there's someone that's gonna be like, oh, just because they're a guy friend doesn't mean that you have to date them. Oh, I only see them as my brother. Oh, this is a colleague. I wouldn't want to take it in that direction with them. And I can argue that maybe in some of those instances, maybe if it's a colleague that you work very closely with, it might be an issue on a professional level. But there's a lot of these women that have male friends that they look at, and even though they might be good guys, are not dating them. So maybe the question is, why aren't they trying to date some of these guys? And oftentimes you will find that either they do not meet the particular standards that these women want in the guys that they would like to date, or even if they meet the standards, these guys just do not want to be with this babe either long term or alone. Like, they would want to have this babe plus a couple others because they are so in demand in the market that, they can afford to, diversify their love and their feelings and, whatever intimate activities they'd have. So, of course, if you're someone who's going for, call it a particular event, and you find someone that you seem to gel well with, you wouldn't want to recommend, or should I say vouch for, because I feel like that's what recommending kind of is, a guy that is going to treat her like shit. Because I feel like even I wouldn't vouch for a babe to meet one of my homies, and yet she is the absolute worst type of babe, or, she just has behaviors that I don't find to be particularly pleasant. Because at the end of the day, you want the best for someone. Or, even if you don't care about the best for someone, then it could be a case of just you not really wanting to put your name behind something that you wouldn't classify as a good idea. But anyways, all that said, like, those kind of try to explain why it is that a lot of these women aren't trying to pull their male friends to come with them. One, because it's hard, and two, because some of these guys aren't guys that even they would want their own friends to date. But that said, I looked at it and I realized that this, in as much as she didn't say it like that, I do believe the truth of it is that a lot of the singles events that are there are having fewer and fewer men, or just fewer men in general, and there's a reason behind that. Now, I was about to call it the single male epidemic, but I felt like something else was in the mix. And the reason why I had wanted to call it the single male epidemic is because more and more guys, over time, through a bunch of character development, adulting, stuff that you hear on the internet, and so on, are being sensitized out of the idea of dating, because the idea of getting into a relationship with someone is either looking risky or just looking like a very expensive, bad idea. Whether it's a case of you liking a babe so you simp and she's the wrong kind of babe, or you trying to get with a babe and they put you through a bunch of shit. Then also, you being rejected earlier on in life, and then, you start doing a little bit better for yourself, and you realize that the same women that rejected you are now seeming to pay a bit more attention to you because you seem like a more stable option, is making a lot of guys feel a little bit desensitized to the idea of dating. And as such, this is something that might be affecting men, but while I could sit back and be like, oh, finally, these babes that used to talk so much shit about guys are finally getting their worth. Like, while I could go down that path, at the end of the day, this is something that is actually affecting both sides of the gender scale. Which is why I stopped trying to look at it as a single male epidemic, and I'm thinking of it as an issue with millennials in general. And I say this because you'll find that most singles events will probably have millennials. There's a reason why. I started asking myself if maybe, just maybe, the dating tropes and social media that is out there, which millennials have probably experienced a little bit more than Gen Zs, could have actually been the reason why we have a lot of millennials that are having issues as far as relationships are concerned. And I say this because I feel like Gen Z has embraced relationships a lot more than a lot of millennials have. And of course, Gen X's were all okay with relationships, and they kind of did start some things that the millennials continued. And so when you look at it, in some way, you could argue that it's true, because when you look at a lot of the things that have happened throughout the times, you realize that millennials have been used as guinea pigs for a lot of things, because millennials came about, right around the time that the internet was becoming a thing. Social media was basically being pushed to millennials first, even before Gen Zs got into the mix. So you think about it, a lot of the experimentation that you can say has been done as far as dating is concerned, a lot of the online debates, and a lot of the hypothetical social media situations that have been brought up have mostly been pushed to millennials as opposed to even the Gen Zs. Because you think about it, the idea of 50-50, his money is ours, my money is mine, men are trash, as well as many other, tropes that have affected the dating market are concerned, they were pushed first to millennials before the Gen Zs. Even you look at, the independent woman of today, a lot of that is something that was tested out on millennials for the most part, And then Gen Zs are now kind of getting into it. So you think about it, this is a millennial problem. And this is a matter of experimentation of that, whenever it comes to dating tropes and stereotypes and behaviors and strategies. Then you throw in a bunch of social media and the hypothetical options that people have, and you realize that all of this chaos has hit, for the most part, millennials. And as a result of that, it's fucked up a lot of the dating that millennials could have had, should have had, and as a result, may not be having. And normally, whenever I come to such a conclusion, the next question I'll ask is there a way that we could reverse this problem? Is there a way that we could, quote unquote, unfuck ourselves as millennials? And to be honest, this one is hard. For us as millennials, it's hard to save ourselves because the times have moved. A lot of us are in our 30s. Actually, the last batch of millennials are turning 30 this year, if I'm not wrong. And from there now, it's just a matter of trying to deal with whatever it is that happened and trying to make the best of it. The most that we can do at this point is saving Gen Zs by telling them, shut off the internet, go touch some grass, and understand that everyone is different and relationships are different. So, to kind of conclude all of this, if you are having trouble settling down and you are 30 and above, we've got ideas why. And you've heard some of them. We know the system that caused a lot of this shit, and while you may not be able to undo it, at least try to decipher it for the coming generation so that they can at least avoid a lot of the bullshit that we've gone through. Although, then again, I could be wrong about all of this and maybe I'm just chatting a bunch of shit. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG. It is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.